From the 1820s until 1860, the political scene of the country was dominated by the Democratic Party, which was in turn dominated by the Southern Democrats, who obviously favored slavery. Not only did they wish to protect slavery in the states where it already existed, but they wanted to extend it to the newly acquired territories in the West. For a long period of time, the Southern Democrats were so powerful that they were able to push through any measures that worked in their favor. This included gaining a majority in the Electoral College and ensuring that a Democratic president was always in office. In turn, the Supreme Court was largely Democratic, and in essence, the South controlled the government for a long period of time. Things remained this way until 1860, when the Northern and Southern Democrats came together to nominate a candidate for this race. An argument broke out, and the two factions could not agree on a candidate. The Southern Democrats nominated John Breckinridge and the Northern Democrats Stephen Douglas. Also in the running was the Whig candidate John Bell and the Republican candidate Abraham Lincoln. The South feared that if Lincoln was elected, he would get rid of slavery. Therefore, Southern states threatened to secede from the Union if Lincoln won the election. In the end, he gained victory, greatly helped by the fact that the Democratic vote was split between two candidates. Only 3 days later, South Carolina called a convention on secession and proceeded to secede from the Union on December 20th, 1861. They were followed by 10 other Southern states, and the stage was set for the Civil War. The ironic thing about the secession of the Southern states in response to Lincoln's election was that the states were never really in danger. The most that Lincoln could have hoped to do would have been to limit the expansion of slavery. He by himself could not have abolished slavery. The only situation in which Lincoln could have abolished slavery was the one in which the South entered into. Secession and war provided the perfect background for Lincoln to liberate the slaves, and this he did with his famous Emancipation Proclamation. So, in reality, the South was scared, and in response to this fear, the leaders of the states overreacted and plunged the nation into civil conflict. It is also important to note that the decision to secede was not made by the majority of the South. It was made by very few wealthy leaders. A referendum was not held in any state that seceded from the Union. After the Civil War, the political scene was much different. Lincoln had been assassinated on April 14, 1865, and the presidency passed into the hands of his vice president, Andrew Johnson. Johnson at first tried to bring the South back into the Union in the way that Lincoln had wished it to be done, by forgiveness and kindness. He acted on the assumption that people of the South had not really been changed by the war, and if given the chance, would come back into the Union willingly. But Johnson did not possess the power that Lincoln had over Congress and lacked sufficient willpower to bring his plan through. Many congressmen believed that the South had been compromised and that the North's position as victor should be used to reform the South. The Republican-dominated Congress essentially took over the government, passing a series of acts that limited the power of the President and the Supreme Court. After this, they could pretty much act as they pleased. This led to two reconstructions and the military occupation of the South. Congress bestowed full rights of citizens and the right to vote on the freed slaves in the 13th and 14th Amendments, though one of the primary reasons they did this was so that they can get the black people's votes in the congressional elections. They set up corrupt governments in the states that had seceded, and they were run by Northerners. Part of the problem was that the North had not felt the effects of the war as much as the South did. The war did not reach many areas of the North, and people were able to live their normal lives. In the South, however, the situation was much different. The people of the South had thrown themselves heart and soul into the war. It had ravaged many of their lands, and most of them had experienced it firsthand. Because of this, Southerners felt that the North did not understand their situations, and in many cases this was true. This feeling, combined with the Northern occupation and government, did not go far to heal relations with the South and stirred up feelings of hate toward the North and blacks that continue to this day. Eventually, though, the Southern Democrats were able to regain control of the South, and by 1877 the Reconstruction was over, though the effects of it were felt for years to come. The Civil War was a defining moment in American history. It was the culmination of many dramatic events, and it has continued to affect the country ever since. Not only was the political situation radically changed by the war, but so were the moral and social ideologies of the people. These changes have had a profound effect upon the nation, both for good and bad.